everybody. Hello, Deb. Here we are for
Hi.
another deliciously motivating mindset. Motivated.
Yes. Yeah, motivating. Yeah. I just have to giggle because little do the listeners know that just before this, we've probably talked for about 2 hours about life and everything. And then we're like, hang on, are we doing a podcast? What are we doing here?
That's what we're really here for, is to talk to these lovely people.
Let's share our wisdom, not just between each other. Yeah.
Just remember to hit that record button.
Yeah, oops.
But you know, what you just said is a beautiful way to share with our listeners what we want to talk about. Is we want to talk about trust. I've always believed that trust is an inside job. And so to your point, I trust that when we hop on a call, we figure out the whole world and set everything to right before we even get on.
Yes, we do. I love the way you go, trust. Is this an inside job? And I just instantly go to a prison program. Is this an inside job? Is this inside? Yeah. Is this inside or not? But we're actually referencing, is this our intuition trust? Is this our inside job of our own bodies and our mind?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
But
yeah,
not the prison.
No, not the prison. Not an inside job in the prison. But where I come from is I have this kind of conversation a lot of times with clients about, they will tell me that they do not trust another person, for instance. And so, like, you know, they don't trust a person to do what they say they're going to do, or not do what they're not supposed to do, kind of thing. But my feeling is that if I can't trust somebody else, then it says I don't trust myself to discern or judge or label or be in the right place at the right time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And, you know, the trust, you know, even when you talked about trust, it's quite an interesting one, because it's not only in family and, you know, businesses, and, you know, if I delegate this stuff to a work colleague, are they going to do it properly?
Yeah.
You know, and if you're an entrepreneur or solopreneur or whatever, you know, and you're wanting to delegate someone to ask them to do something, build your website, you know, are they going to do it on time? And then it's that whole thing of, have I given enough instructions without micromanaging, nitpicking, without, and, you know, it's the helicopter parenting, you know, checking everything out of it right. You know, it's that whole thing. But everybody must have a level of trust.
Yep.
You know, getting in a car and driving. Do I trust this vehicle enough that it's going to get me from A to B? You know, do I have enough, you know, in my energy world that I can actually do this? That it's not just the vehicle, it's actually, am I going to get there on time? Do I trust that? This trust is such a heavy word, that it's difficult to swing by on.
Yes.
And it's, trust, like, just even when you say, you know, there's a vehicle, there's the school, you know, do you trust the teachers at school that they're going to do the best they can for the children? You know, just it's such a big thing, bringing in old baggage from previous relationships. You know, do I trust this partner not to, quote, cheat on me like the 20,000 partners I've had? Well, actually, I don't know if anyone's ever had 20,000 partners. In order to clarify
That's a lot.
Oh, yeah. I do over-exaggerate on some things, you know, that'll be a busy wee person. You know, and so do I trust that person not to do this? And how do you, is it inside or not? Where is that coming from?
Right. I like what you just said, though, because the thing is that some of what you were describing could be coming out because a person's a bit of a control freak. You know, these things aren't going to take place if I don't know about this and take care about that and follow this protocol and explain what I mean and what I don't mean. But to me, trust is do your best, do what you're good at, communicate what your needs are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then let go. So for me, trust,
and let go.
Yeah. Because that is the thing, is that for me, trust is a big part of that letting go, and knowing that, you know, I may not see like we're talking about being an entrepreneur. So if you give somebody a task, like say, update my website, and I want it done by this date. Well, you doing and saying anything different now is not going to change if the person who is doing your website got sick or something happened or technology broke or the WordPress plugins didn't work properly, you'll still get your website, but it might just happen.
The goalpost might move.
Yeah. And so for me, like I said, I'm going to, in that scenario, I would still trust that I'm going to get a great website.
Yeah.
But I can roll with and reset
the time frames.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's wise to shift, but be clear in your time frames.
Yes. Be clear in your time frames, but then be flexible too. Right? Because if it's, you can't be saying this is the time frame and it's got to land in here and come hell or high water, it's got to happen, right? Because there's things happen. Things can come up and get in the way.
Yeah, I was just actually thinking about loaning money too. It's a great one, because when you loan money to some people who go, can I borrow a certain amount of money just to get myself through or whatever, and you loan it on the expectation that it's going to come back, and then they don't pay by that date, or they delay and delay and delay. And you know, I do find the moment you let your attachment, and I label it a psychotic attachment. Now, it's not a psychotic attachment, but you know, you're like, why haven't they paid me? And you start getting tense and
angry, yeah.
and your body's holding, why haven't they paid me? It's $20, you know, and it can take you to a psychotic level, but clearly not a hospitalized psychotic, if I label that. But you know, but it can take you to that really white knuckled fist, you know, when you're like, why haven't they paid me back that $20? They said they would. They've broken my trust. I'm not going to let them do it anymore. But the moment you actually sit and get present and go, you know what, maybe something else has come in that's really important. Maybe they're actually dealing with something that's far greater than your flipping $20. So just allow that trust it's going to come in.
That's right.
And unless you said to them, I need it by this date so that I can pay somebody else, they may not know. And they go, look, another day I'm in hospital, my mum's here, I can't do anything. You don't know what that other person's dealing with. So, but when you let that attachment go, that's when more opportunities and everything comes into play.
I absolutely, and I really like what you said there, because the other part of that is that if you did that, lend somebody money, and you needed it to be back by a specific amount of time, then it's up to you to communicate that. And to like really have that understood and agreed upon. Whereas in what you were saying, and I think we can all relate to that we make up stories. It's like, you know, how dare they lied to me and
I'm going to cut them off as a friend, even though they've been around since 10 years old and I'm now 60. That's it. I'm done with their stuff. It's over $20. You're really going to cut a 50-year-old friendship, you know, but that's where I say the psychotic word, and it is a label and a joke word, but it can take you to that point of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily have to be, you know.
Yeah, it's like kind of getting overly attached on something, like you say, and like I just said, it's about that making up a story. So if you're saying, that's it, they're cut off, and how dare they, it's time to take a deep breath and say, in the grand scheme of things, how important is this really?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. In the grand scheme, how important is this really? Not knowing what the other person's dealing with.
That's crucial. And so see, that to me comes back to trust, because if I have a loving, trusting relationship, me with me, then I'm not going to make up stories. I'm not going to make up stories, because I'm going to know and recognize, hey, I don't know what's going on with that person, but I'm available. Like, you know, I can pick up the phone and say, hey, is everything okay?
Yeah, it's funny. I was getting my sister to pick me up from the airport the other day, and I sent her a couple of messages, and she said, yep. And her reply back was, yep. Now, my sister doesn't say yep. Okay. You know, the message comes back, and I was like, oh, that's a bit. So I sent her another one like, hope you're having a great day or something like this. And she didn't reply. And I'm like, oh no, what have I done to upset her? You know, so then I sent another one.
Right.
No trust. I sent her another one to go, it's okay if you can't pick me up from the airport. I can easily get someone else. And she said, really busy. You're not a priority. I'll be there. And I was like, then I was like, oh my God, how horrible of me.
Yeah.
So it was that I just went, well, why, you know, why haven't you just said, you know, so I didn't trust. If she didn't want to pick me up from the airport, she would have said. My sister's vocal. My family are vocal. Maybe I'm probably the more vocal of the lot. But I didn't trust myself enough. And then I started going, gosh, I haven't spoken to her. Have I been rude? And I started creating all these psychotic stories in my head of, oh, I'm a bad sister. I haven't spoken to her about her kids or anything like that. And then so she was lovely and just went, I've got a lot going on, you know, straight back. And I just said, I'm here for you, which I'm clearly not because I've turned into a psychotic mode, but that was my instant reaction to go back. And it just reminded me, it's not just about you, Deborah. It's not just about you. Just, she said, yes, she'll pick me up.
Yeah.
I sent her the time, but it was because it wasn't her normal communication back that I was like, oh, what have I done? And I started to do these stories and read into stuff that was nothing.
Yeah. So you made up the story. And it's funny talking about sisters, because I had one with my sister.
What, a sister?
One of my sister. No, I had a sister. No, and it was.
A sister. Yeah.
But mine was on the other end of the spectrum, because what you've just shared is you were making up the story of, oh, she doesn't want to pick me up and I'm not important enough. One of my sisters did that to me, because she had written me something a few weeks ago, and I just did it. You know, on Messenger, you can do a little lovey eyes.
Oh yeah.
That's all I did. I was like, got it. You know, I didn't really have anything to say. But when I spoke to her, my goodness, she'd made up the most incredible story about how she had pissed me off, and I was mad at her, and this, that, and the next thing. And I just sat there and thought, what?
How did you feel when you got that? Yeah, how did you feel when you got that? You were just like, I thought it's not worthy of a 10-sentence response. I just responded because we both have a life. And that would be oh my gosh, I would take that personally and go, why would you even do that? Why don't you just communicate to me? And then I'd get grumpy, and then another story gets created.
My instant reaction was, I have no idea what to say. I was like, I had no words to come out of my mouth, because it was kind of like, and to your point, it's like, well, if I was really thinking that, I would tell you. If you really upset me, then it's my job to say, hey, I didn't like that, or that really upset me, or you know what I'm saying? It's like, and if I didn't, then that's my stuff.
Yeah, isn't it? It's the stories we create.
I know.
So I guess it's trusting ourselves to not run this BS story that goes to, then it can go to psychotic level, because I was like, what have I done? And then I started playing out all the times, all the things I hadn't done for her. And I'm like, oh my God, I hadn't asked her about her children. I hadn't done that. You know, I didn't put enough time and effort when I spoke to her last. You know, and you start beating yourself up over BS stuff.
And like you're saying, it's, so here's the thing though, I think it's part of human condition. We all do it. We all do make stories up. But the piece, and this is something that's very important to me, is to just be conscious. Like, I'm not going to come and say, hey Deb, how come you didn't respond to me the way I wanted you to? Did I upset you? Have I upset you?
It's funny because I got on a call. Go.
I was just saying, this is a really big piece on trust, is that I trust that I will say what I need to say, but I trust that that I'm open enough for you to say what you need to say to me.
And that I'm going to receive what you're saying with love, and I'm going to deal with it my way, but I would rather you talk to me than put those stories in your own head about whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a really important part. But so what I was trying to say is, I think that the key piece is to acknowledge we make up stories, but then witness and say, oh, look, there I go again. wait, I'm going to press pause on that story and go and do some research or go and do some fact finding or asking right questions, not have I pissed you off? Just say, is everything okay?
Yeah, and it's so how do you not like so if you were to relationships, and this can be an intimate or business, you know, you've had an employee who's, you know, you perceive as shat on you in the past, and you know now you're interviewing new people, so you're more alert, or you've been in a relationship with somebody for 5 years and you know then they've dabbled elsewhere in the relation, you know, or whatever. And how do you trust the new person without bringing in your old shite?
That's
Because
awesome.
that's really important for everyone. How do you trust that that teacher's not going to, you know, you may have had an upbringing where the teacher picked on you and you go to send your kids to school and you've still got that memory stored of when the teacher said to you, you're not going to amount to anything, you know, and then, or your parents, because that's molded you to who you are. But how do you deal with that? There, Moira. There.
And you know, it's actually such an important part. Is it's so important to do like a clean sweep. You know, like to your point about the carrying the crap into the next relationship. How many times have I, and I've seen it many times where people go from one relationship and then you turn around and there they are with somebody else in another relationship and they talk similar or they look similar or and there right there to me is an indicator that person, the one that I know, is still carrying the story or the emotional charge or the pattern or the mindset. And so this is why,
and I call it haven't learned their lesson.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is about calling us into alignment with, am I honoring myself? You know, if a relationship is finished, whether, like you said, whether it's a relationship, romantic relationship or a business relationship, are you letting go of any emotional charge? You know,
Yeah.
because if you go around, you know, earlier we were saying about lending your friend $20, and then let's say that person didn't even give it back to you. But then if you don't release with love and compassion that that's what happened, then next time somebody asks you for $20, no, I never lend people money because I never get it back.
And then you actually say those things too. You don't just go no because back in the day I lent this person and the other person's just like, Jesus, I just asked for frickin' $20 or just borrow it for the next hour. It's easier to come out of your wallet instead of walking back to the car or something. You know, they're just like, whoa, yeah.
But at the same time, it is okay to say no.
Oh yeah,
it is okay to say no. Just don't say no and then do that whole big volcanic eruption. It's because you haven't released that emotional charge.
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe you only have one $20 in your note in your wallet and you need it for something else. And so absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it is an interesting one, and it is that story. It is a volcanic eruption too. Like you've really hit the nail. It is, and it just, I call it the green mile. You open your mouth and it just keeps coming.
I know, I can see that graphic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Opens the mouth and it just keeps spewing out.
And that's what sometimes when people tell lies, just for the record, everybody, that's what happens. They open and they overcompensate and they just keep talking.
Blah, blah,
that's
blah,
a green mile.
Yes.
And then you're like, hang on, why are you giving me all this deep? That's just a little catcher for if you're going to catch someone on the lie. Not necessarily people, just so you know. But it is, it's a green mile, that volcanic eruption that's just bubbles and then boom, out it comes.
But that means this is a time for self-awareness. It doesn't mean you're going to catch it every time. Sometimes you will erupt or have that green mile spewing out. But as soon as you can, go look inward and see, what do I need to do to release that, to have some compassion for myself, to forgive myself, to let that go, because this is a block in trust, right? When we're doing those things, we ain't trusting ourselves or them.
And it is down to not trusting them, but it's actually yourself. But you feel like and I'm going to use the word idiot. You feel like an idiot because, oh my gosh, I've had every partner's cheated on me, or why didn't I learn my lesson, or any of that. Like, I've loaned so many people this, or I've done this, and it still happens to me. Why me? And that just squashes, it's like a mullet in the ground. It just squashes you and squashes you and squashes you until you just you haven't even found yourself again. You're just so stuck.
Mm-hmm.
You can't bounce out or even see any way of looking around.
But just something that landed in my mind as you were saying that is that when we don't trust ourselves, or we get stuck into that kind of story, there's a feeling of not being worthy enough.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like saying, maybe that's part of the eruption too, is that there's a part of us inside saying, hey, what about me? How come I can't matter?
Yeah, I was just thinking of it, and I go back to this client I had recently, and she had the last 4 partners or something, and she's just got into a new one. Had cheated, and I say cheated because that's the standard people say. I say dabbled outside the relationship. There's lots of things I say, but we're not going to put those on a podcast.
No.
But let's just do the dabbled outside the relationship.
Dabbled outside of the relationship. Okay.
Yeah. And she's like, why me? Why me? Why me? And then I'll go, okay, so have a look. Could you see the signs?
Mm-hmm.
No. And then I'm like, okay, have another look properly. Take your rose-colored glasses off, and I did see that, and then they did that, and then this happened, and I'm like, okay, so you were just blind. That's all it was. You were just blind. But it is down to that self-worth and not learning your lesson. So when you have someone in your life, they're there to give you a lesson,
mm-hmm.
and that's whether it's an employee, in business or personal. Everybody comes into your life as a lesson. You don't have to look and go, why is that person in my life? Here's the supermarket lady. What's the lesson here? It's only when real emotion comes up, whether it's elation emotion or deflation emotion, then go, okay, what's sitting around this? What is this biggest lesson here? This person's loving me differently to my last partner. What's the bigger picture here? Is it now that I'm ready to accept that love, or
Mm-hmm.
the employer that I had, shat on me, so I don't want to go out and employ, go to that type of workplace again, a government organization, because they, and we do create those stories. And so it's letting the attachment of our old stories go,
mm-hmm.
and sending them with love, like what you've said, with compassion, and love yourself for going, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't recognize that. I didn't know that's what it was.
Yeah. But it's also to allow yourself to be in flow. To be in flow with what's being said, right?
Absolutely.
The dog actually agreed with us there.
I couldn't hit my mute quick enough, so I'm trying not to snort with laughter. Little dog was agreeing with what we were saying, but it is about being in flow. Thanks, Phoebe. It is about being in flow with what you have and having that trust and faith within you that you're okay, and you're not going to get not burnt, you're not going to get damaged, like, to the extent if you start recognizing it. But it is about our self-worth.
It is, because the other part in this too is that all too often when we don't allow ourselves that flow, the statement that comes to mind is A equals A, right? So it's like, well, if I was in a relationship with a person that looked this way and they treated me or spoke to me this way, then somewhere in my belief system, or my inability to trust, is going to label every person that looks like that as there's another one. Whereas if I have a deeply trusting aspect with me, then I'm not going to do that. I'm not, like you were saying, rose-colored glasses. Sometimes those filters of that A equals A then means that we don't come back to trusting. Like trusting, one of the things that I often say is I trust that every situation I'm in, I have the capacity to come through it. And sometimes that's all I can hold on to.
Is that a mantra that you say, or affirmation that you say every day, or is that just if you go into something and it feels uncomfortable? Because that gave me the old goosies erecties. That was actually really, that was really,
it's something I use if it's right. If it feels uncomfortable, or because you were saying about the lesson, I don't necessarily go around and say to myself, okay, so what's the lesson in here? But if it's uncomfortable, or my head's starting to make up a story, I will take a deep breath, and I might even put my hand over my heart and say, I've got this. I wouldn't be here if I couldn't come through this, or deal with this, or have the wherewithal to gain the insight, or stay the course.
I don't believe the universe gives you something that you cannot handle.
Yeah.
No matter how broken you feel you are, shite's happened in the past, you've made it through, but I don't believe we're ever going to get a lesson or whatever, something that happens to us that we cannot handle.
Yeah.
I believe we can. It's not, the universe is not going to give you that breaking point. It'll get you shattered, but not to the end. But it is, I really like that trust mantra, just to, and it is that hand on that heart, and just stopping and breathing again, and taking that breath to go, okay, here I go again. Trust yourself and
get back into the flow, and because the other part too is, with trust, you may not actually see the solution to a problem. You might not see it, but if you, with trusting yourself, you will recognize it when it lands, because no problem exists without the solution also. And that's another big part of my trust equation, if you like. And I think this is based on Albert Einstein-ism. I love his wisdom. And there's a quote somewhere that basically says that a problem cannot exist without the solution already existing, because one can't exist without the other. We live in polarity, right?
I love that.
Mm-hmm. And so then if I trust myself, then if I'm only focusing on a problem, by trusting myself, I can say, okay, hey, wait a minute. I trust that the solution's here, and now I need to just step back or stay with this sense of compassion and kindness to myself, and say, the solution's here, or the solution's in existence, and I trust that I will recognize it when I come upon it, or when it arrives or lands for me.
Yeah, it is that, and I think that is that's a trust that quote from Albert Einstein's actually working. And like people say, one door shuts and another one opens, and then the others one say, when one door shuts, make sure it doesn't swing you and hit you on the ass. But it's having that trust that, okay, this job may not be for me, but the next one's going to be far better.
Right.
It's having that trust, I guess, in the universe or in the greater world, or the whatever you'd like to label it, that it is going to flow. I trust that the money's going to come in, and that's a big thing to trust.
Mm-hmm.
Dabbling into, it's a big thing to trust.
It's a huge thing, and it's so important. And and this is you were saying about when one door closes, another opens. There's a quote somewhere that I came across a couple of years ago that says, when one door closes, another opens, but it's those damn hallways that can be the bitch.
Oh my God. Yes. Leah, I got my little, it's so true. It's those,
isn't it?
Oh
so it's like, no,
that hallway can be so flippin' long and dark narrow.
I know.
And what?
I know, but
it's not immediate.
That's the perfect analogy for what we're saying, right? Is that if the door closes and you now find yourself in the hallway, key piece is to recognize it's a hallway. There is another door. And
I
so if
like that.
you
It
have to go
is the
down the
hallway
hallway
that
and
can
try
be
every doorknob.
and it is, and that hallway can be very dark.
It can. Yeah.
And yeah, it is the hallway. It is,
Mm-hmm.
because we think when one door opens, we step out of one, we go straight to the other. Nope.
Nope.
And you don't know how long that hallway is going to be, or
That's right. But
or what that journey is going to be.
in hindsight, I'm thinking that it's probably a good thing that there's this little bit of a time lag between the door closing and the next one opening, because you know how we talked a moment ago about the carrying our baggage forward. If we get to hang out in the hallway a little bit, then we are going to dump what we need to release. Let go of what's not going to serve that going through that next doorway.
See the bigger picture and accept it deal with it, let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And trust that we're always, because the other part too, that a conversation just landed in my mind here, it was about people can sometimes get irritated or impatient with themselves if they have to deal with the same issue again. And so then they start getting irritated and they don't trust their process, and they, this always happens for me. Well, I really encourage people to pause, like we're suggesting here, is to pause and understand that if something's repeating, it's at a different perspective. It's at a higher level. And once you recognize that, it'll pass way faster than if you get stuck in a story of like, oh, woe is me, it always happens like this and I'm stuck. Because we never are.
And when you're like that, just for the record, everybody, people love to hang around you. Not.
Not. Negative Nelly.
Yeah, negative Nelly. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right on that. So what's the easiest way of letting it go? Letting that. In fact, that's actually. I'm not gonna ask that question. I'd like to do a podcast on that, on how to let attachments go, because I don't think we can cram that in.
No, I don't think we can. But to your point about how can we maybe foster this idea of trust being insight, is to just see if you can step into that space of being the observed and the observer in the same moment. Like watch the words that are coming out your mouth. Watch the reaction. Watch the triggers that might come up because you see somebody that reminds you of a person who broke your heart, or somebody that didn't pay your money back, and just watch. Don't
your physical
judge them.
symptoms, how they cram up.
Yeah. Just witness it. Don't get into, oh, this is dreadful, or I always do it this way. It's just and I've always said this with my own letting go process that I help people come through, is that we can't change anything until we accept what is.
Yeah.
And so if we have a propensity to tell stories, or to have a stuck mindset, or carry outdated beliefs, just is. It's what you're doing. Yeah. Once you accept it, then you can say, okay, I accept all aspects of me, trust, mistrust and all, warts and all. Now what are you going to do? What's the next step to feeling better, or to leaning more into a trusting idea of, I would not be in this situation or in this environment if I couldn't deal with it, or if I didn't have the tools or the capacity to come through in my best way.
I think the other thing, I'm just thinking about it, it's like procrastinating, when you put something off and put something off, and then you do it, and then you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad after all.
Yes, exactly.
And then you're like, how did I create a story, and how did I waste all that energy and my moaning and groaning, that whole thing. And I think that's the other thing, is trusting that it's not going to be painful, it's going to be painless to get it done.
Yeah.
to do it or connect with somebody or whatever it is. But it's, it is having that trust that it's not going to be as bad as what you think, because your stories in your head are so far crazier.
They're hundreds and hundreds of times worse.
Yeah, well, look what happened with my sister and your sister.
And my sister, absolutely.
And then when I spoke to my sister, it was like, oh, no, that wasn't even a problem. And I just felt like a dick.
Mm-hmm.
I literally felt like a dick that and it is that the story in my head was far greater than the actual action.
Yeah. But it's when we start witnessing and recognizing that, to me, that helps me just laugh it off. Say, oh my gosh, here's my storytelling mind going off again.
Yeah, and it is. And it's that recognition and how to deal with it straight away. And the longer you recognizing it, and then you're going to spend a week pondering on it, like that's just a waste of energy. Recognize it and let it go. Under 5 minutes, let that go. Yep. Do whatever, to not, under a minute, 2 minutes, just let it go and walk away, because a week later, if you're still dealing with that, what's going to happen to your eating patterns, your sleep, even your skin's going to be yucky, and, it's going to turn into that lopsided mindset.
Full-blown catastrophizing. Psychotic, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we hope that this has helped you sort of feel more into your inner trust. Trust you. It's been a good conversation. Yeah, we trust this has been a good exploration.
It's definitely made me think about things I haven't trusted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even though talking to you, my mind is going, gosh, I didn't trust that person for that, or I haven't trusted that's happened. So it's brought up some, I'm not going to say triggers, it's brought up some alertness of me to do a little bit of work on.
Beautiful. Well, I hope that's what it's done for our listeners too. And you know what? I feel like it's probably something that we can circle back into and have even more in-depth conversation at some point in an upcoming episode too. There's lots of different pieces in here that I think we could go into deeper.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, I trust that everyone got some value out of today.
We both trust that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Moira, for allowing me to trust that we were going to get through this call today. You're like, shoot, look at the time. We're going to do a call.
Yep, here we go. Yeah, this has been good. I
do actually think there is a level 2 to this. There is definitely a level 2.
Yeah.
There seems to be a level 2 to a lot of the stuff we do, but this is definitely something that hits home for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we'd love to hear from our listeners if you've got any insights, or how do you trust? Do you trust?
Yeah. What do you do, and what are you holding on to? And yes. Thank you, Moira. Thank you,
Thanks,
listeners.
Debz. Thanks, listeners. Thanks, Debz. We will talk to you again real soon. Bye.
Thank you.